Hello, welcome back to your math class. This is Mr. Barrett, and today we're going to talk about Introduction to Functions. Let's start. Let's talk about functions. A function is a special type of relationship on which for every input there is a unique output. So what is that input and output, Mr. Barrett? If you are going to remember in our past lessons, we talked about solving equations or linear equations or even the linear systems, and we are using the variable x. We are using the variable x and y. This variable in function, I mean, we're still gonna talk about the same variables, and it's just here it's more specific. What we meant is that in this functions, x is not only just x, it is called the domain, or it is also known as the independent variable. As we know it, it is the independent variable. So what is so special with the independent variable? Well, it's actually tells you that the x value determines whatever it is that will be the value of y. That's why we call this x as the independent variable. So what is y values on the other hand? Well, on the other hand, y values are what we call the dependent variables. It is being called dependent variables because the values of y always depends on the x value or the independent variable. In other words, going back to the examples that we had before, if a person is being paid $12 per hour, that means the amount that the person is going to receive depends on the hours of work that he's been doing or he or she has been doing. That means the hours is the independent variables, and the amount that that person is going to get is the dependent variable. So that's pretty much a very, very common example of how does the function works. So in this lesson today, we're not really going to elaborate all of those word problems. Instead, I'm just going to show you how does the x value, or so known as the input or the independent variable, works along with the y, which is the output or the result whenever you used the input in a certain function. Now, what is a function? Well, a function is a special type of relation. Every equation that you know so far is what we called is a relation. So in this example, I have this certain function. So to make it simple, we're now gonna call those equation. We're now gonna call them function or relation or simply equation in this type of lesson. So I have the equation or the expression x plus 4, and we would like to know if this defines a function. So if this is the function, we would like to know if indeed my input x is going to result to a unique output. So let's just say x value could be 0. Let's just say x is 0. If x is 0, that means this will be 0. That means that will be let me just change my pen. If x is 0, that means if that's the input, that means x here, if I'm going to evaluate this expression or function, we have x is 0 plus 4, and 0 plus 4 has the output of 4, which means I am going to have an input of 0 with an output of 4. Let's check if I will still have a different answer if I am going to have a different number. Because the goal here is for every input there should be a unique output. So let's just say this is, let's just say positive 10. If I get 4 here, that means there's something wrong with the function. So let's just see. So if x is 4, this will be x is 10. I'm sorry, if x is 10, this will be x is 10 plus 4. And the output to that is 14. So again, I have a unique output. So this will be 10 and 4. So now let's try another input. So let's go with the negative. Let's just say -5. If this is -5, and we're going to evaluate this function. This will be x is -5 plus 4 is going to give me an output of -1. In other words, if my input is -5 to that function or to that expression, the output will be -1. Oh, I have to change this. I forgot this one. I'm sorry about this one. This should be 14. So obviously here I have a unique input for every unique output for this specific expression, or now we call that a function. So that's how you're going to evaluate, or how you're going to check your function on given the specific input or output. So let's have another example. So in this case, I have the function or expression 7x, and we would like to know what will be the output in any given input. So let's start with -3. If my input is -3, the question is what will be the output? So that will be 7 times x, and the x is the input or the independent variable, which is -3. 7 times -3 is -21. In other words, if the input is -3, so I'm gonna write it down as the set of dominant ratio. This will be an input of -3 has the output of -21. Let's find another input. Let's think of another input. Let's just say this is, let's just say another -1. If that is -1, what will be the output? So that will be 7 times -1. Oops. It's -7 times, +7 times -1 is -7. Which means if the input is -7 or -1 is -1, the output is -7. So let's have one more time. Let's have one more example to this. Let's just say the input is, let's have bigger number, 50. If the input is 50, what will be the output to that? So that will be 7x, or 7 times 50, which will be 350. That means the input to that, if the output to that when the input is 7 is 300 and, or sorry, I'm looking at the wrong number. So if the input is 50, the output to that function 7x is 350. There we go. So yeah, that's another example. So what if we are going to have a little bit different type of function? In this case, the function is -3x plus 1. In other words, you multiply the input by -3 and you add 1. If the input, let's say, is -10, what will be the output? So let's write down the function for that, or the function notation for that. So that will be, or the set builder notation. So that will be an input of -10, -3 times -10. That will be -3 times -10 plus 1. After you multiply that, you're just going to follow the order of operation. -3 times -10 is a positive 30 plus 1, which give you the output of 31. In other words, if the input is -10, gives you the output of 31. So input is x, output is the y value. Now let's have another input. Let's try 0. Let's try 0, a neutral number, not positive, not negative. Let's try 0. If the input is 0, what will be the output? So that will be -3 times 0 plus 1 is 3. -3 times 0 is 0 plus 1. That makes a positive 1. In other words, if the input is 0 and that function, negative 3x plus 1, the output will be positive 1. Now let's try one more time. Let's try another value. If the input is, let's say positive 12, what will be the output to positive 12? So that will be negative 3x plus 1, or negative 3 times positive 12 plus 1. Negative 3 times positive 12 is negative 36. That would be negative 36 plus 1. That makes a negative 35. Which means if the input here is 12, a positive 12, that gives you the output of negative 35 using that function negative 3x plus 1. So the thing here is there are millions, infinite inputs that you can use. As we talk about the rational and the irrational numbers, if you remember that, you can use any input and it will definitely give you a different output. So that's why we call this function. So I hope that we learned something from the video today. Thank you guys for listening. You have a good day.